put it to even some more use and try to get North Cape out even more so. What you find behind you is a present from my children who have stated before that, Dad, you need to take this. So we're going to try. We're going to see how it does for us. So don't stand up in front of the camera. I ask that you go with me in the spirit of prayer. Gracious and merciful God, we thank you once again for this day, one that was not promised for us, to us, but was granted because of your grace. And we thank you for the new year that is present, and that we will be present in it, that we will move in a way that is meaningful, that speaks, that witnesses, that shows all we need, that you are ever present, not only in our lives, but theirs as well. Lord, you have promised that we would have all that we need. And even being the Father that you are, there are times that you provide us with some of the things we want. But just as we have experienced this last month, because of the birth of your Son, Jesus the Christ, we know that we are loved. Amen. The first Sunday of Epiphany. We got a new thing going here. And sometimes we just need to get our bearings together before we go into all the things that take place. Epiphany Sunday is a transition Sunday. It's the ending of Christmas season, the beginning of ordinary times. This transition is the third stage of the cycle of light, or the cycle of nativity. First we had Advent. We then have just finished with Christmas. And now we have Epiphany. In these various stages, we are invited to give honor and glory and praise to God, who has acted in favor of a covenant people who has come to us through the Messiah. The gospel tells us that the wise men from the east had a brief encounter with King Herod. And we know Herod, we know that scoundrel. He had some ulterior motives for wanting to meet with the wise men. And they knew Herod had ulterior motives, and having seen how dishonest and insincere he was in their conversation with him, as Arsenio Hall used to say on his show at night, things that make you go, We find that he intended to search for the child as well, and he wanted to get rid of it. We find that in verse 13. And once they went to Bethlehem and were welcomed by Joseph and Mary, the first thing they did was knelt down, gave honor to the newborn child. Epiphany offers us a myriad of theological possibilities, a spiritual journey that takes us to Jesus. It divides signs that give us our path and parts us to a way to God. It is important as part of our stewardship. Oh, that word again. Stewardship. We are getting a late start on our stewardship campaign. But we want you to be not only prayerful, but want you to seriously go to that place, to that part of the house, the backyard, the porch with the cup of coffee in the morning, wherever it is that you go and spend your time with God. And as you get your letters this coming week and the weeks to come, that not only when you read them, you let them seep in and you feel what is being given to you and where God is calling you. See, the importance of our stewardship is not only in our lives, but in our time, our talents, and our treasure. Knowing when to start a new faith venture, and even knowing when to bring some of our old ones to a halt. That may be some of our challenges this coming year. That starting some new ventures to reach out even more to the community in which we serve, and maybe even possibly bring to a halt some of those things that we have done for years and years. We just don't know. But the new year brings new and different things. This is part of that business. This is part of that walk. This is part of that change that we do and where we go. In our text this morning, it tells us that they had set out. They're going ahead of them with the star. That was rising and moving forward. And it finally had stopped over a place. That was in verse 9. And then we hear in the verse afterward, they got excited. They got excited. They had been traveling far and wondering, when were we going to find this child? When were we going to really be rewarded for what it was we were going through and doing? And in the presence of the heavens, this star, shining brighter than any star had ever shone before, it come to a stop. And how many of us have seen a spotlight shining up in the sky trying to draw people to a certain place? How many of you seen that? Can you imagine being the wise men upon their camels, horses, whatever they were on, as they're traveling, and you see this star up here, instead of seeing a light shining up, there's a light shining down. And they're going to each other. That's the place. That's where we need to be. That's where I want to be. Brothers and sisters of Northgate, this is the place. This is where you want to be. Because through you and through God, we are going to do some wonderful, great things. Yes. But verse 12 comes along. Verse 12 comes along and it reminds us that having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod. You know that snake in the grass. How many of y'all remember Dudley Do-Right? Snidely Whiplash. Yeah. They had spent some time with Snidely Whiplash. I know you don't understand, but look it up on YouTube. You'll find it hilarious. But they had been told in a dream, don't you go back to see him. Don't you tell him a thing. Go home. by another way. And they returned to their country by another road. You know, those of you that are still working and those of you who have retired, and we have a number of you here, in your work day, in the standpoint of going from home to work, you found a route that you wanted to go each and every day. Matter of fact, some of you worked in places anywhere from as little as 10 to as much as 30 and almost 40 years. And you drove that same route every time. It became commonplace to you. Matter of fact, it was so good and you were so comfortable with it, there were probably things that you failed to notice or see anymore. But oh, let the city start doing something. Let one of those big old cones and some of those barricades show up, and you've got to find another route home. Driving's not as comfortable as it was then. Because now I've got to look around. See, my route previously, I'd worked it out. I didn't have to go through many school zones. Now, this new route in which I have to go for this detour, there's 4 schools on this route. Not only is traffic backed up, but I got to stop and pay attention. Finding another way home. You know, things that are not commonplace to us anymore causes us to not only become apprehensive, give us some nervousness to ourselves, but also it can open our eyes to some things. You know, that construction detour all of a sudden changes the way we pay attention to our surroundings because our regular isn't regular anymore. And sometimes in the midst of another way home, we might see those places that Jesus is and did not realize it because we either had ignored it or sometimes we just didn't see it. In the midst of finding another way home, we might see places that are like the homeless living under a bridge. It might be the standpoint of driving past a convalescent or a hospice center, never knowing that it was really there. And all of a sudden, you think about the standpoint of what is taking place there. And now, I need to add this place to my prayer list. In the midst of finding another way home, we find that someone is hungry. We hear about those who have been incarcerated. And even in the midst of finding another way home, we see things that bother us, both challenging and exciting, such as protests in front of the White House, demanding justice for dreamers. And even in our differences, hear me now, even in our differences where we stand on that, Jesus is calling us to find another way home. See, another way home can also refer to helping others be able to live within the grace that God offers all. Even in our differences, we can find that way home. And home is not just always that vertical box that we live in, but home is where we want to be with Christ. where we want to be with God in our lives, where we want to be as a collective body with one another. See, finding another way home gives us every opportunity to be where Christ is. The epiphany of Christ was already there. All we had to do was recognize it. All we had to do was become a part. The text on occasion takes us in different directions and challenges us to look at that star and remind us that it's that preventive grace that is offered through God and His working within our lives and what He would have us be, and us coming to that realization. God is asking us to take a new direction in 2019. He's asking us to possibly look for another way home. So what will that decision be? What will that new project be? What will be that new relationship? What will be that adjustment? We need to follow through and do what is required. Only what's required. To live justly, humbly, and to walk faithfully with our God. In other words, are we willing to find another way home? The people of God. Amen.